Hello, I'm David Weeks, President and Director of Academic Affairs at the National High School Debate League of China. Today, we're going to be discussing cases, what cases are, how to write them, and how to best use them. So what is a case? A case is a pre-prepared position paper that you read during the constructive speech of a debate round. A constructive speech lasts 5 minutes. So because you have 5 minutes that you're allowed to speak for, you should use all of that time. So your cases should be about 2 full pages, which should take you about 5 minutes to read. Cases ultimately give the judge the first impression of your team and explain why the judge should vote for your side. Let's look at the individual parts that make up a debate case. The first part of a debate case is the introduction. In an introduction, you explain what your side is and what the topic is. So you want to state whether or not you are pro or con, or affirmative or negative, they mean the same thing, and what the exact wording of the topic is. So make sure that you have the official NHSDLC translation of the topic in English. Please don't use the Chinese translation, and please don't use your own translation from the Chinese of our topic. Make sure to use the English that we provide. Remember that your introductions don't need to be very long. You don't need to say good morning to everyone. You don't need to remind everyone how honorable your opponents are, what a pleasure it is to be there that particular morning. You should already have had a preliminary discussion, maybe introduced yourself on a personal level to your judges and your opponents before the round starts. By the time that the actual debate has begun, the niceties and the formalities should be over. You just want to state your side and what topic you are. You can save the rest of the stuff for before the round starts. The next part of a public forum case is definitions. So what do you want to define in a public forum topic? What are the important words to define? Well, the first thing to think about is, are there any difficult words to define? Are there any words in the topic that you didn't know what they meant? The second thing you want to define is important things in the topic that determine what the terms of the debate are. So for instance, if your side is defending the protection of the environment and their side is defending the promotion of economic development, you probably want to define what the protection of the environment is. So if it defines either your side or your opponent's side, you probably want to define them and give a little bit more detail and explain what exactly it means to protect the environment. Does it mean stopping people from littering? Does it mean closing down coal plants? Does it mean discouraging private car ownership? All these things would matter for environmental protection, but we don't know which one of those things you're talking about unless you give us a clear definition that states what exactly it is that we're talking about. So where do you find definitions? Well, obviously you can start with the dictionary, but we recommend that you look in scholarly articles in journals or in reports from international organizations and from university professors. We find that those definitions are generally more contextual. Rather than defining the word protection and then the word of and then the word environment, you might find a contextual definition that defines the words the protection of the environment altogether, and that might give you a much more clear definition. No matter what you choose for definitions, make sure of 2 things. First, make sure that you cite where the definition comes from. Tell us if it's from Merriam-Webster's dictionary or from the Oxford English Dictionary, or if it comes from a university professor. Second, you want to make sure that your definitions are fair, that they will actually lead to a real debate round. If you define yourself into a win, the judge is not going to be impressed. You want to make sure that your definitions are fair and that your opponents would reasonably agree with those definitions. Remember that the definitions are supposed to be mutually agreeable. Next, you want to define the framework. So what do we mean by framework? Well, a framework is really a criteria that we use to tell whether or not the topic is true or not. So for instance, if I've got 2 different kinds of impacts, one to do with the loss of money and one to do with the loss of life, how can we possibly compare them? We can't put a dollar value or an RMB value on a human life. Because we can't put a dollar value on human life, or because we can't directly compare human lives to diplomatic status, or human lives to benefits to education, we ultimately need a criterion to figure out what are the most important impacts in the round. So a framework gives us that criterion. So maybe the framework is the protection of life, or maybe the